Chris brings the vision, the strategy, the plan. JJ's resilience forged in the sand. Together they rise to sharpen the mind, teaching the hustle, the leader's grind. Leadership Live, where the truth unfolds. Strength in the stories, the wisdom they hold. From the grind to the grit, where leaders survive. It's Chris and JJ on Leadership Live.
Welcome to Leadership Live with Chris and JJ, the show where we break down actionable leadership principles you can apply in real time. I'm JJ Hardy, Army veteran and leadership and resilience coach. And I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Pinkowski, a former leadership coach who now leads at the corporate level. Together, we bring different perspectives to the same mission, helping you lead better under pressure, communicate with purpose, and grow where it matters. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is JJ Hardy here with Chris Pinkowski, and we're excited to bring you another episode. It's been a few weeks. Life has been very interesting over the course of the summer, but, we are happy to bring you another episode. Chris, how you doing today?
Doing great, JJ. I'm looking forward to this episode. It's going to be a good one, and just can't wait to dive in.
I know it was a little over a year ago. I believe we talked about this, and maybe not in the exact same way. We'll see how the conversation goes, but, core values and that sort of stuff, that's a really good topic. And a lot of people, not only struggle with leadership because they don't understand the organization's values, but when it comes to their own personal values, they really don't even understand what those are sometimes. And if you don't understand that or even how to figure them out, it can make life very, very difficult, especially when you're trying to hold a hard line with your people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we have spoken about core values before, but I think this is a topic that can be discussed multiple times, right? Plus, there are new people that are watching our show that weren't watching it a year ago. And it's not that anything about the core values discussion changes, right? There's a foundation that it is what it is.
Yeah.
But repeating the message, repeating the conversation, or having something that's along the same lines, it can't hurt, right?
Well,
that's the bottom line.
When you start getting into multi-year conversations about leadership development, I think the topics start to roll into each other anyway, because a lot of the things are very similar. And by the way, when it comes to core values, if you want people to understand the core values, what do you have to do anyway?
Well, if you want people to understand the core values, you've got to talk about them, you've got to demonstrate them, you've got to repeat them,
and you got to repeat them. And so they have to know them, and we've talked about it before, where you got to post them everywhere. You got to make sure you reinforce them. Sometimes you got to hold a hard line. Sometimes there's some wishy-washiness when it comes to the values, because everyone's a different person. But I appreciate this topic, so let's get into it. So if people out there do not know really what core values are, it's basically your beliefs about yourself and others in the way that, I guess, you think that the world should work. I mean, as a whole. Just an example would be, the way you make decisions. There are certain ways to make decisions. There are certain times you got to hold a hard line. I mean, maybe it's the way that you talk to people. Maybe you're a little bit more gruff because that's the way you feel you have to be. Maybe you're not so gruff that maybe you feel like everything needs to be even keel. The way you act as a whole. I mean, there are so many things that go into your values, but usually the most successful organizations and the successful leaders, they go through some exercises to try to figure out what they think is most important. And they may not be able to capture all of their values, but they usually capture a few pillars that they can reinforce in their organization that generally are just great ways of doing things.
Yeah, there are differences, right, between an organization's core values and your individual core values.
Yep.
When we talk about it from an organizational standpoint, I know today we're talking about from the individual, like from the leader's standpoint, but I think this is a good way to kind of describe it and then make that shift. But when you talk about it from an organizational standpoint, your organization's culture are the core values of the organization in action, right? I always say that your core values are the filters that you use in order to make decisions, in order to, just act on a day-to-day basis. The way that you take things that life throws at you is all going to be guided by your core values, right? If something is outside of your core values, that's where right? That's your kind of sphere. And you're like, you know what? If I stack up what's going on here in my life, how I'm going about this, if it doesn't meet these core values, I probably shouldn't be doing it, right? And it goes for the people that you hang out with. Hey, if Joe Snuffy, I'm observing that he's got a different set of core values than I do. Doesn't mean that you can't be friends kind of on a surface level, but those aren't the people that you're going to invite into like the inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
You want people who have similar core values so that you're able to, really have an open dialogue with them, so that when you're together and you're hanging out, it's like, you know what? I can be myself. They're going to be themselves, and we're going to have a good time. We can also disagree and also still be friends and have a good time because we have matching core values. So, that's where the line goes from corporate to individual. And yeah, you need to have some kind of alignment between your personal core values and the organization that you work for, or the organization that you lead. Because if there's a mismatch there, you're not going to be happy within the organization. You're not going to be performing in the way that you expect others to perform based on the organizational core values. So knowing what those are for you is super helpful for your job, for your personal life, for the person that you choose to spend the rest of your life with, the whole 9 yards. And we all have core values that are kind of instilled in us when we're young. They evolve over time. Some people just don't put their thumb on exactly what those core values are. So maybe their decisions are a little kind of gray and fuzzy. And then other people go through exercises to figure out what those core values are.
True. And I think it's important to point out that your core values are not, these shiny object words that everybody thinks are great core values. They really have to match what's in your soul, what you feel is important. And if they don't, then you're not going to live them. And the importance, especially when it comes from a leadership perspective, is that whatever core values you choose for you, that you live those core values. Because if you don't, you're not going to be authentic. And you can tell people stuff all day long, but if it's bullshit, it's bullshit. So, I think it's important to bring that up as well.
Absolutely. It's really easy, especially in this day and age, right? With so much access to social media, and you see all these, inspirational reels and memes by whoever to say, oh yeah, that's one of my core values. But like, you know what? When no one is watching, are you still exhibiting that same core value, right? So I guess I never thought about it this way, but in an organization, if the culture of a company are the core values in action, then from a personal standpoint, I'm going to say that your character are your core values in action.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's so important that when you're interviewing for a company that you ask that question.
Yeah.
Not being the interviewer, being the interviewee. Say you want to go work for them. If you ask what their core values are and say they don't have an idea, well, that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what the culture is like in that company, then is it going to be a good place, or are you just rolling the dice? But if they know and you know yours, then the likelihood, I mean, there's always a possibility that you go work for somebody else and it doesn't work out. I mean, I'm not saying that that couldn't happen, but the likelihood that you align is going to be a little bit higher if they say their core values and they kind of, I would say mostly align with yours. I would say most of the time there's not going to be a company that has core values that are always going to be 100% aligning with yours. But typically if you feel like you're a good person and your core values are similar, then it's probably going to work out. I mean, people don't necessarily leave organizations for what the shitty job. They leave the organization because the people in there just don't get along. So,
Right.
and I mean, it's just like the same concept that employees don't leave organizations, they leave the leadership that they work for. I mean, it's a personality thing. So if you know your values and you ask that question during an interview, it's going to help you be much more successful. And since this is more of a personal core values conversation, I think that's important to bring up because that alignment is very, very important. And then when you are that leader that goes out and starts interviewing other people, well, then you can have that conversation. This is the organizational core values. This is what I feel is important. Since you asked the question, what are your core values? You know, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yep. So JJ, in your work, are there ways that you help people to identify what their core values are?
Well, gosh, there are key things. Yes, there are key questions that you can ask because coaching is all about questions.
Mhm.
And, you know, what are things that you do that you will not compromise with? I mean, oftentimes that's a really good question because it brings out what a person really feels is important. And then if they give answers that don't necessarily spit values, you know, I just ask questions about that. So when you say that in your heart, what do you feel? What does that mean to you? And you know, you kind of drill down into it from there. But questions like that, because coaching is all about open-ended questions anyway. So when I'm trying to help somebody identify their values, it's all about asking them what's important to them.
Yep. Yeah. Knowing what's important to you 100% is, you know, a guiding principle to like figuring out what your core values are. If you haven't, you know, made that list or really just define them. One of the exercises that I used to do with people when I was doing, you know, leadership development was I would say, I would like you to go and make a list of your 5 favorite people in the entire world. The 5 people that are closest to you that if you were stranded on a desert island, this is who you would want with you. And now, once you've had that list of 5 people, and it could be your spouse, it could be your favorite jujitsu partner, it could be whoever, right? Just the folks that you truly enjoy spending time with. For each of those people, I want you to make a list of adjectives that describe them, right? How would you, and you know, list 4, 5, 6 adjectives that describe those people. And now I want you to take that list with all 5 and let's see what's common across all 5 of those people. And if you're seeing the same descriptive or a similar descriptive word that kind of matches 4 out of those 5 people, you know what? Chances are that should be on your core values list because just not by accident, but you have surrounded yourself with people who behave in a certain way, who make decisions about things in a certain way. So because you've done that kind of subconsciously, chances are that those folks are matching your core values without you even realizing it.
Yep.
And I found that to be a really powerful tool for people who are like, where do I start? Like, you know, you can go all the way back to what were the things that your parents taught you growing up, right? What were the lessons that mom and dad taught you?
Oh, yeah. I that's one I've used. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you evolve because as an individual, right? You grow up, you learn these lessons as a kid, and you see during the tough times of like being a teenager where you're making decisions and like where you're pulling from those lessons learned. And then, you know, you grow into like your early 20s and some of those lessons come along with you. Some of them don't, right?
Yeah.
And that helps to kind of form those core values.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important because as we've talked about before, once you figure those out, I mean, you use it to guide your decisions. You use it to guide your actions. You use it when you are talking to your team and you're trying to make a new initiative happen. When you're doing your performance counseling, when you're doing everything. I mean, everything all your values help you align what you do day to day, not just at work. Actually, you find that once you identify those, the interesting thing about that is it takes you everywhere. Even at home, you start having conversations with your kids about values, and then you ask them about what's important. Not that they really know, especially if they're teenagers, but that's a whole other conversation. But you know, it's a great way to kind of guide your day to day.
It is. And again, like we talked about earlier, your values are the filter that you use in life.
Yep.
To guide you. So yeah, it's so important. And especially once you can choose what those core values are and then define them, right? You want the definitions to be personal. So they may be what I think earlier you had said, like, you know, kind of the standard things that people would think about. That's great. You can have those kind of standard words. I know some of my own personal core values would probably hit those like standards, but it's all the way that you describe them for you. And that's what makes it personal. But that's also what helps you to remember them and apply them because there's something about it that means something to you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I put discipline, mindset, and leadership on the wall, but I need to add resilience because those are kind of my most important things to me. But, you know, it's not just about the word leadership. It's not just about the word mindset. It's not just about the word discipline. You know, how I define those words are how I use those values. And just like you got done saying, but I wanted to just drill down into that a little bit more. But you know, when you start doing that and you start guiding your day to day through that kind of lens, the cool thing is, you know, you may know that when you're talking to other people, what bothers you, but sometimes you don't know why it bothers you. And sometimes when you're at work, when you have, say you're in a supervisor position or something, you hold a hard line, but you don't know why. Well, when you start identifying these words and what they mean to you as far as values are concerned, then you might run the why behind what happened in that situation through your values, and you might just say, well, shoot. Well, that's why I reacted that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm holding such a hard line. That's why I didn't want him to do that. And you know, that's when values start to make sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words and what they mean to you. You'll start noticing the little idiosyncrasies about yourself that end up popping up when you react. And when it comes to self-discovery and emotional intelligence, that's really, really key. And we don't talk about values nearly as much as we should because, you know, all the other things that we talk about kind of come back to this. And, you know, if you don't understand your values, you're really, really missing a lot. And a lot of these things that we talk about, probably they're going to sort of make sense, but you're going to be thinking to yourself, okay, well, how do I apply that to me? Well, if you understand your values, there's your answer.
Yeah. Yeah. and they don't have to be flashy. They
No.
don't have, in fact, I would encourage people to keep it more simple. You know,
Yeah.
when you're not only identifying but defining what your core values are, like keep it simple, because the more complicated you make it, the more difficult it's going to be, and especially when you keep it simple and someone asks you, why did you do X? Oh, well, the reason I did X is because, you know, one of my core values is this, and this is what that means to me. And that's what guided that decision.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you to explain to other people, and it's easy for you to just like, yeah, that's why. That's why, you know, the core value of resilience. You just mentioned that, and that also happens to be one of my core values. So so I'm going to say that the exercise here that I mentioned a few minutes ago, take the people that you like to hang out with, make a list of how you would describe them. I mean, I didn't know that resilience was one of your core values, but here we are. We're 2 years into doing this show together. We enjoy each other, and we share some core values.
Hell yeah. Well, and you know, it's interesting because, you know, the way I define resilience, it might even be completely different than yours. Oftentimes people will define resilience as how you bounce back from adversity. I don't feel like resilience is that. Resilience is that resilience means to me leaning into hard stuff on a regular basis so that when those really, really difficult things come back that you're probably going to have to bounce back from, you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And that bouncing back doesn't just happen by chance. It happens because you trained yourself to be ready for that thing.
Yep.
And if I would have asked you what resilience was, well, I'll ask you, so what do you think resilience is to you?
Yeah. So resilience to me it's about your mindset, and it's about being able to get through tough times through patience, because when you're resilient, you can look at the big picture and you can say, okay, I may be stumbling here. I have to overcome this hurdle here, but it's all about the long term. And I need to be resilient now. I need to be mentally tough, because what holds people back so much is their mindset.
Yeah.
When they tell themselves that they can't do something, guess what? You can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you tell yourself, I'm doing this because I have a greater good, right? I've got a big picture goal to reach. Now you're able to push through. So resilience, in my definition, is having the mindset of knowing what your long-term goals are and knowing that what you're going through right now is temporary. And you have to train yourself, like you just said, to just push through the temporary hardship in order to get to the end goal.
Yeah. See, you know, the way we think about this, so it all kind of comes back to the same thing. But when you ask somebody their definition of leadership, it's going to be different. When you ask somebody their definition of mindset, it's going to be different. You and I, we have aligned conversations on a regular basis. So I knew our definitions of resilience wasn't going to be too far off. However, when I defined it and you defined it, it was a little bit different. And that's okay. We're all just a little bit different. But when it comes to your values, who gives a shit about how they identify what the definition of resilience is, or mindset, or leadership, or whatever the case may be? When you are thinking about what your core values mean to you, it's what they mean to you.
Yep.
If you compare yourself to the world, you're never going to understand yourself, because you're always going to be trying to mold yourself into something else. So be true to yourself, and those core values help you do that. Don't
100%.
don't use resilience because Chris Pinkowski uses resilience.
Right.
Use resilience because you really feel like it's important to be able to go into hard situations and come back just as stronger than you were when you went in. You know, that's because, and it's not because that's important to Chris or that's important to me. It's because it's important to you.
That's right. That That's what it all comes down to, right?
Yes.
Your personal core values are important to you. They're not important to anyone else. No one else gives a shit.
No.
But no one else has to pay your bills or walk in your shoes either.
Definitely not.
Right.
Hey, if you want to pay my bills, I'm not going to give you my bank account number, but I'll tell you where to send the check.
There you go. Yeah, just Venmo me. There you go.
There you go.
But like,
this
for
is
me,
a great conversation.
What's that?
I said this is a great conversation.
It is. I could go on and on about this.
Yeah.
I personally have 6 core values, and my first one, and I think it could be similar to some people if it's on their list, and it could be different from other people, but my first core value is family first. And the way that I define family first is I do things for the people who will always be there for me, right? I will go above and beyond for the people that are closest to my heart, who I love in life. And family doesn't necessarily mean blood. So, I've got some really good friends that I would consider to be family, right? My wife and I have friends who our kids, even though our kids are, now almost adults, refer to those people as aunt and uncle, whoever, right? We're not related in any way, shape, or form, but to us, they're family.
Yeah.
And, so family first as that core value of like, you know what, if there's something going on with this person, I'm there to help them. I'm there to support them. I'll do whatever they need me to do. But that's an important one for me. And some people may not define it that way, but they still are very attached to their family. And that's okay. Again, These are your personal core values. They're not the world's core values.
Yeah. And mine have adapted. For a while I built my framework for my business, but those are not necessarily my personal core values, but those are things I find that are important. Since you named yours, I'll just go ahead and say mine are, faith, family, leadership, resilience, and servitude. So I think it's important to serve, whether that's in the capacity of volunteering or, giving back once in a while. I really feel like that's super, super important.
Yeah, it is. And I'll quickly run down the rest of my list. We already talked about resilience and family first, but trustworthiness.
Yeah.
It's super important that you trust yourself and you act in a way that others will trust you. Authenticity, be yourself, and you'll attract the right people, you'll repel the wrong people. Bravery, like be brave. And whatever you're doing, just be bold and brave. And then finally is humility, realizing that you don't have all the answers and being willing to say, like, you know what, I was wrong there. I need to learn a lesson.
Oh, yeah. No, those are all excellent. They all hit home with me too. So, I mean, those are contained in probably, like, I would say sub core values in a way, just like discipline is a sub core value of leadership. Yeah. I think most of those would be a sub core value, and how we define all of those are all going to be different. But just remember that when you are defining your core values, it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter if Chris and I would feel that they're important. It doesn't matter if your mom or your dad, or honestly, even your wife or husband feel that they're important. If they align, that's important, because you want people that are close to you in your life to align with your core values. Your parents don't always, but you have to honor your parents, especially if you're a religious person. That's just kind of how that works. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to picking those people to be closest to you, they should align, but that doesn't mean they have to be the same.
Yeah. I mean, if you made that list of, hey, I'm talking to JJ here, and these are the 5 or 6 words that I would use to describe him.
Oh, you're going to talk about a Venn diagram.
Core values, right? You could draw that Venn diagram, and there's going to be some kind of overlap.
You know what? I don't know why, But in the last week or two, I think I have had more people bring up the Venn diagram. I could go 6-8 months without even mentioning it, but it's a good way to talk about alignment, because when those circles intersect, whatever commonality is between those 2 circles, or 3 circles, or 4 circles, or 5 circles, or whatever the case may be, then you truly know if certain things work, whether it's core values or mission objectives or whatever the case may be. It doesn't really matter, but a Venn diagram is important. But this conversation's about core values, so remember, I'm just going to hammer home on this. They are about what you feel is most important in your core.
Yep. Don't
look at David Goggins.
Nope.
Don't look at Jocko Willink. Don't look at John Maxwell. Don't look at any of these big figures out there. If there are certain things that hit home with you, great. See what that means to you. And if it really does, you'll feel it. You'll feel it in your heart. You'll feel it in your chest when you're saying it out loud. If it really does hit you the way you think it'll hit you, and then when you go through that lens, when you start reacting in day-to-day life, and you notice, oh, well, that absolutely is true. When I reacted that way, it was because of this. Well, then you found your core values. Don't just identify them, test them. And once you figure out what they are, you'll know.
Once you figure out what they are and you've defined them for you, now live them.
Live them. Yep. And likely, if they are truly your core values, you probably already are.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, Chris, you have any closing comments before we roll out of here?
You know what? Yeah, my only closing comment is, I would love to just offer some homework to whoever's watching us. If you have not defined your core values and had them front and center, I challenge you to go through the exercise that I talked about earlier. Make a list of those 5 people that you just love being around in life. Identify how you would describe them, see what's common, and see where that resonates with you. But I challenge you to come up with and write down your core values and define what they mean for you.
And then I think you should test them.
Test them out.
Yep. 100%. And don't test them as, trying to reflect on past situations. When you react to something, whether it's in a really positive way or a really negative way, they got to be kind of extreme. Run it through the core values. If they match, you hit the lottery.
That's right. If
they don't, maybe they're not wrong, but you might have to figure out what that definition really means. And that it's going to be I think core values are kind of a working model anyway. So they'll change over time. Maybe not a lot, but they'll change over time. So that's a great assignment for everybody. Identify your core values, test them, put it in the comments. Speaking of the comments, if you enjoyed what we talked about today, please like the video wherever you saw it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you saw it there. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as a whole so that you can keep on watching these. But the most important thing is to put a comment below. So we know what you want to hear, but I want to know what your core values are. And I think Chris does too. So if you want to comment that below, please let us know what your core values are. Maybe we'll even mention a couple of them in the next call.
There you go.
Okay.
And, you know what? To kick it off, I'm going to put my core values in those comments.
There you go. Perfect.
Nice.
Thank you for tuning in now and in the future, whenever you see this, and have a great weekend.
Have an awesome weekend.